I would define brain rot in one sentence as the state of becoming an animal that no longer thinks. We are constantly making unconscious choices that work against us. We are surrounded by AI, automation, digital conveniences designed to make life easier. But we need to ask ourselves, are they just making us lazier, less capable of thinking for ourselves? That's the real danger. It's not just about entertainment or convenience. It's about what happens when we lose the ability to sit with our thoughts, to challenge ideas, to focus deeply. No amount of self-control is going to save you. In a way, the size of your notepad determines the size of your thinking ability. Hello, I'm Yun-kyu Lee, and I qualify as a lawyer by passing the Korean judicial examination, the most rigorous and competitive exam in South Korea. I also run a YouTube channel, serve as the CEO of 2 education-related companies, and work as a lecturer and author, managing a total of 5 different jobs. I would define brain rot in one sentence as the state of becoming an animal that no longer thinks, whether by personal choice or as a result of external influences. In today's world, the concept resonates even more deeply. Modern society, shaped by cultural and environmental factors, increasingly discourages deep thinking, pushing people towards a more passive, uncritical state of mind. Unlike in the past, modern society provides unparalleled access to information for virtually everyone. Traditionally, the role of delivering new knowledge was carried out by classical media like morning newspapers, evening news broadcasts, and similar sources. However, from the late 1990s to early 2000s, with the rise of the internet and widespread smartphone adoption, information became a readily available commodity rather than a privilege. As a result, media outlets could no longer compete purely on the novelty of their content. Instead, they began to rely on sensationalism and stimulation to capture attention. At the same time, modern society is no longer struggling with the lack of solutions. Low-quality content producers began exploiting human psychology in a way that mirror gambling addictions, keeping people hooked on uncertainty and instant gratification. This has led to the normalization of clickbait culture, where hollow, substance-free content thrives, driven solely by provocative headlines or thumbnails. Meanwhile, thoughtful, in-depth content that requires time and reflections has become increasingly marginalized. The demand is now for fast, emotionally charged, and instantly consumable content. I call this formal cultural natural selection, where only the most sensational and attention-grabbing content survives. And as people become conditioned to this environment, they gradually stop thinking critically and become slaves to low-quality digital consumption, which in turn exacerbates the phenomenon of brain rot.
Were there any clickbait videos that you watched recently?
Yeah, a lot of, because I always spend my time when I go to bed going to the YouTube channel, and I like the game channels and like Street Fighter 2 or some kind of that, the old things. I spent 2 hours because I'm struggling every day to 5 different kind of jobs, so I need to rest without thinking.
Have you noticed an increase in brain rot among people around you?
I need to look far. In some ways, my entire life could be described as a constant battle against brain rot. And I have no doubt that my colleagues and the students I teach are experiencing the same thing. The reason is simple. Brain rot isn't just an individual issue. It is systematic. Modern consumer culture is becoming increasingly hyper-stimulating, and the way we process information has fundamentally changed. Our brains naturally respond to uncertainty by releasing dopamine, and today's digital landscape exploits the mechanism. Almost all modern content thrives not on accuracy or depth, but on stimulation and intrigue, hooking us with clickbait-style curiosity loops and forcing us to constantly seek and confirm new information. In this environment, our brains are effectively being saturated with dopamine and making us ever more dependent on quick, superficial consumption. No one is immune to this. No one is free. Not unless they retreat into nature and cut themselves up from it entirely. There is a substantial scientific evidence suggesting that excessive digital media use, smartphone dependency, and multitasking negatively impact cognitive abilities. Was research at 2017 found that simply having a smartphone nearby, even if it's not in use, can reduce working memory and focus by approximately 6 to 10%. Similarly, the obvious research in 2009 demonstrated that individuals who frequently engage in video multitasking tend to have lower concentration levels and weaker cognitive control. These findings indicate that modern technology is reshaping our cognitive processes, often at the expense of deep focus and sustained attention.
How can I know if I actually have brain rot?
The most typical signs of brain rot include declining attention span, struggling to focus on tasks for expanded periods, chronic fatigue, feeling mentally drained even after just minimal cognitive effort, burnout and mental exhaustion, a persistent sense of overwhelm and a lack of motivation, sleep disturbances, difficulty falling asleep, and feeling unrested despite sufficient sleep. At its core, brain rot manifests as a reduced capacity to handle cognitively demanding tasks. The overproduction of dopamine, driven by excessive digital stimulation, leads to a state of chronic hyperarousal, which ultimately disrupts sleep, drains mental resilience, and erodes deep thinking and focus.
Do you think that maybe certain cultures are more vulnerable to brain rot?
It is likely to be more prevalent in countries with exceptionally high smartphone and internet usage rates, such as South Korea, Japan, and parts of Northern Europe. Additionally, Judd Hofstadter's cultural research suggests that Eastern cultures tend to prioritize collectivism over individualism. In such society, there is often an implicit pressure to remain constantly online, whether for work, social interactions, maintaining rapid communication. This results in increased screen time, greater cognitive load, and faster mental exhaustion, and ultimately making these environments more susceptible to digital overstimulation and burnout. In workplace setting, this phenomenon also leads to accumulated digital stress, where employees struggle to disengage from their professional responsibilities due to persistent connectivity expectations. And that said, this is a general observation rather than an absolute rule. Factors such as individual usage habits, social infrastructure, and broader cultural dynamics all play a role in determining the extent of brain rot within a given society.
What are some effective ways to overcome brain rot in our current society?
The biggest problem with brain rot isn't that people actively chose it. It's that they don't even realize it's happening. Whether we like it or not, we are constantly making unconscious choices that work against us. The real issue here isn't just about personal discipline or motivation. It's about the environment we live in. The systems that shape our decisions without us noticing. Look at modern technology. We are surrounded by AI, automation, digital conveniences designed to make life easier. But we need to ask ourselves, are these innovations actually making our lives richer, or are they just making us lazier, more passive, less capable of thinking for ourselves? That's the real danger. It's not just about entertainment or convenience. It's about what happens when we lose the ability to sit with our thoughts, to challenge ideas, to focus deeply. And that's exactly why we can't fight brain rot with willpower alone. If you're constantly surrounded by distractions, by things designed to grab your attention and keep you hooked, then no amount of self-control is going to save you. You have to change the system, not just fight the symptoms. This is where choice architecture comes in, something we talk about in behavioral economics. Imagine water flowing down a path. If you want it to go into a certain direction, you don't just stand there pushing the water. You dig the right channels and the water flows naturally. The same goes for your habits. You don't beat brain rot by constantly forcing yourself to make the right choice. You design an environment that makes those choices easy and automatic. So where do we start? The first step is awareness. You need to monitor yourself. How much time do you actually spend on your phone, on your PC? How often do you find yourself jumping from one thing to another, never really focusing on anything? And what effect is all of this having on you, on your attention span, your memory, your ability to sit with a difficult task and actually get through it? Most people don't even realize there is a problem. And if you don't see the problem, you can't fix it. That's why self-monitoring is so important. It's the foundation of real change. Once you've identified the issue, you've got two main ways to deal with it. The first approach is to eliminate the root cause entirely. Get rid of your smartphone and disconnect from social media. Move to a cabin in the woods like Thoreau. But let's be honest, that's not realistic for most people. You can try temporary detoxes. Maybe set some strict rules about when and where you use technology, but at the end of the day, completely cutting yourself off from the modern world isn't a sustainable solution. So that leaves us with the second approach, managing the side effects instead of eliminating brain rot entirely. You counteract its negative effects. For example, if you're spending an hour on your phone or PC, you balance it out by taking double that time to reset and recharge. If you're constantly consuming low-effort, dopamine-heavy content, you push yourself to engage with something more difficult, more mentally demanding. If you know that screens mess with your sleep, you make a rule. No screens at least 3 hours before bed. There aren't radical solutions, but they work because they are practical, sustainable, and built into your daily life. At the end of the day, beating brain rot isn't just about discipline. It's about designing a lifestyle where the right choices happen naturally. If you create the right conditions, if you set up the right habits, you don't have to fight so hard to stay focused, to stay sharp. You'll already be moving in the right direction, just like watching a well-designed channel.
You talked about choice architecture. Do you think that people who know and understand the concept of choice architecture act differently from those who don't?
The biggest difference comes down to problem-solving ability. A problem only exists once we define it. We only recognize an issue when we can put a name to it. Ferdinand de Saussure referred to this as the signifiant, essentially the idea that we can only interpret the world through the language and symbols we have. Take constellations, for example. Someone who understands them looks up at the night sky and see patterns, meaning and structure. But to someone unfamiliar with them, it's just a random scattering of stars. The same goes for personal challenges. If you're coughing and have a headache, but don't recognize these as symptoms of an illness, you won't even think to look for a cure. This is why understanding choice architecture gives people an advantage. In French, there's no linguistic distinction between butterflies and moths. They are both called papillons. Without a name for each, you wouldn't instinctively see them as different things. The same applies to problem in our lives. Being able to define and diagnose an issue with precision in the first step towards solving it. The second major difference is that people who understand these concepts can adjust their environment to fix issues more effectively. If brain rot were a disease, that real question would be, do we need surgery to remove root cause? Or would simple medication be enough? If you had a cold, you wouldn't go straight into an operating room. Likewise, if someone had terminal cancer, just taking a painkiller wouldn't make a real difference. The wrong solution to the right problem won't get you anywhere. At the end of the day, you can only act on what you can see, and you can only see what you understand. Knowing how choice architecture works doesn't just help with making better decisions. It strengthens the self-discipline, awareness, and problem-solving skills, giving people the ability to take active control over their own lives rather than possibly reacting to whatever comes their way.
Can you also recommend some concrete lifestyle changes that people can actually take?
Right. Telling people to stop using smartphone or PC altogether would be as good as a death sentence in today's world. That's simply not realistic. But what we can do is reshape how we use them, making sure that our digital habits actually serve us rather than work against us. One simple trick is keeping your smartphone's home screen completely empty. No distraction apps, no endless notification pulling you in. If that's too much, try regularly changing the placement of your icons or removing shortcuts on your PC for everything except the essentials. The idea is to create just enough friction to interrupt automatic and mindless scrolling. On your PC, you can set it up so that only productive programs launch when you turn it on, while keeping your desktop completely clean with only a few necessary icons left. Another helpful tool is installing a monitoring program that tracks how much time you spent on social media, short form videos, and messaging apps. Because let's be honest, most people dramatically underestimate how much time they waste on these things. Think of it like dieting. You wouldn't try to lose weight while sitting in front of the buffet every day. The most effective way to cut back is to remove temptation entirely. Our brains process information competitively, meaning only the most attractive or stimulating inputs to make it through. If you structure your environment so that only useful, high-value content is readily accessible, you won't even have to fight against low-effort, brain-rotting distractions. They simply won't be in running. That said, people aren't machine. You can't expect to only consume what's good for you and remain satisfied forever. That's why cheat day exists in dieting. And the same principle applies here. The key, though, is controlling the frequency of indulgence, not the intensity. There's a psychological concept called hedonic adaptation, which means the more frequent you reward yourself, the less satisfying those rewards become over time. This is why people who binge on short-form content every day eventually need more stimulation just to feel entertained. So instead of constantly giving into low-quality digital consumptions, set up a fixed schedule, say once every 3 days or even once a week, where you can indulge as much as you like. This way, you're still allowing yourself to enjoy distractions, but you're preventing dopamine burnout and keeping them from taking over your daily routine.
How can a person design a reward system that promotes long-term focus and discipline?
Rather than saying that people suffering from brain rot crave instant gratification, I'd argue that, at least in modern life, they are particularly drawn to uncertainty. This isn't just speculation. It's been well documented in B.F. Skinner's experiments. You know, the one where a rat presses a lever and the food doesn't always come out, but sometimes it does. That variable reward system makes the rat keep pressing, hooked on the unpredictability of the outcomes. The same mechanism applies to people who compulsively scroll through social media, gamble, or chase viral content. On the other hand, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the positive psychologist known for his work on flow, explains that the most intense states of focus and immersion occur when a challenge is difficult enough that success is uncertain. This too is based on uncertainty, but unlike brain rot, it uses that uncertainty in a constructive, life-enhancing way. A real-world example of this is Google's OKR system. When employees set goals, they don't aim for 100% completion, because that would mean they weren't pushing themselves enough. Instead, achieving around 60 or 70% is considered optimal. It creates a challenge that is difficult but still within reach, allowing people to stretch their potential without feeling overwhelmed. So rather than designing a reward system that simply promotes long-term focus, the better approach is to lean into uncertainty in a way that works for you. Instead of trying to break free from unpredictability, why not use it to your advantage? Set goals that are meaningful on a broader life scale, but also make sure that their outcome isn't guaranteed. That way, instead of mindless seeking random dopamine hits, you're engaging with challenges that keep you intrinsically motivated, mentally engaged, and always striving towards something worthwhile.
Do you have any personal habits or principles that you follow?
Of course, all the examples I've mentioned earlier about overcoming brain rot are things I personally practice every day. But if there's one more habit that I emphasize, something that has made a huge difference for me, it's rigorous documentation. Human memory operates on two levels, short-term and long-term. Short-term memory is further divided into sensory memory and working memory, and everything we do is first processed in working memory. The problem? Working memory capacity is far more limited than we think. Even at their peak, most people can only handle about 4 pieces of information at once. In reality, for most of our day, we are probably only juggling 2 or 3 things in our heads at a time. Now, here's the issue. Modern life demands that we process far more than that. We don't have the luxury of keeping our mental workload to just a few tasks. That's why I believe that just like a computer, our brain needs an external hard drive, an analog tool that expands our mental workspace and keeps our thoughts organized. For me, taking note isn't just about remembering things. It's about expanding my thinking space. I don't write things down because I'm afraid of forgetting. I do it to free up cognitive capacity so I can think more clearly. In a way, the size of your notepad determines the size of your thinking ability. That's why I always recommend using a digital or a physical note-taking system, whether it's a tablet, a notepad, or even a structured journaling app. More importantly, it's not just about jotting things down. It's about actively challenging your own ideas and refining your thoughts through a structured reflection. If you get into the habit of externalizing your thoughts and systematically questioning them, you've already taken the most fundamental and a powerful step toward the maintaining focus and productivity.